Welcome back. Today is International Women's Day, a day for celebration as well as a call for action. Joining me live now is Melanie Brock, Women of Japan founder and non-executive director at Mitsubishi Estate. Melanie, thanks for your time today. We know there's lots of celebrations happening around the country, and I realise you spend your time in Japan at the moment, but how do you view in terms of where Australia is at with equality and empowerment?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting for me. You know, I'm obviously born in Australia and I'm Australian, living in Japan though, and two very different countries with great, different history and culture, structural impediments to gender equality and the like. But I do find it quite interesting that in Australia we've been talking about gender equality and about women's participation in the workforce and other issues related to International Women's Day, in fact, for many, many more years than Japan, and yet we still seem to be grappling with the same issues. So it's it's great to be here, to be able to hear what Australia's focus is, but at the same time, it's sometimes a little disappointing that we're still having to have the old conversations that we should have moved past.
In terms of how things are in Japan, I'm interested particularly with the shrinking and ageing population there, as well as, an acute workforce shortage. What is being done to get more women into the workforce?
Well, obviously, the pandemic, like in Australia, has disproportionately affected and impacted women and families. And so, of course, a lot of the casualised and part-time workers, being women, were the first to go, and they'll be the last to return to the workplace. The government's doing everything it possibly can. Probably, like in Australia, that pace is picked up when business and corporate Japan will move forward in terms of what it wants to do in giving people a better chance at getting back into the workforce, and also having flexibility in terms of the delivery of that work.
Is there anything else that could really be done in that area, though?
Oh, I mean, I'm not a policymaker, and I'm always telling politicians what I think, both here in Australia and in Japan. I'm not so sure that they necessarily appreciate it sometimes. But I do think that, it has to be, in many cases, a combination, of course, business and government working together. In Japan, there are a lot of not-for-profits that support more vulnerable parts of society. There are some really interesting female women politicians who are doing a great job in terms of pushing. And a lot of Japanese corporates are making a difference. And I guess it'll be a collective effort, but it probably won't shift until we make the move in our own mindset that getting women back into society is really an economic issue and not only a gender issue. And that's the same in Australia, I think.
On that, through your own corporate experience, we know that there's a lot of conversation about getting more women in those senior roles, but what should be done for, I guess, the people starting to enter the workforce themselves to ensure they can get to that point?
Yeah, it's obviously very difficult. There's a very low number of women on boards. There's a very low number of women in government, both local and national, in Japan. But it's not so flash here sometimes either, I think. And so I guess we can learn from each other. We need to probably have a look at some examples where things have been policy-driven, also business-led. But, training younger women, training younger men, providing people with flexible work practices, allowing for much more hybrid style of work, I guess will be really important. And childcare. Childcare is exactly, in terms of being an issue, the same in Japan and Australia.
Melanie Brock, thanks for your time today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.